So much right there on the program African Discourse on Independent Television. My name is Evan Sunokuge. You're welcome to the show. The last time we had this program was actually last 7 days ago. That was on a Monday when we talked about things that you need to know in Africa. And of course, things that as Africans we need to build on so that we can reposition this continent in a better position. Well, today on the program African Discuss, we're going to be looking at investment opportunities on the continent and the challenges and the prospects in these investment opportunities. Now, it is on record that there are more than 27 business investment opportunities in Africa. You talk about farming in cocoa, you talk about oil sector, and of course, you talk about all the natural resources that interest foreigners into the continent. I mean, very recently we've seen the surge of, Americans into Africa, Chinese into Africa, Japanese into Africa, all because of our natural resources. Now, they come here to invest, but ironically, the opposite is the case because Africans are trooping, outside the continent and in search of greener pasture. Perhaps after this program today, we may redirect, your interest one more time into the continent so that you can see that most of these things that you leave the continent for, they are highly domiciled inside this continent. Well, to help us make sense of what we're going to be discussing today, we have a business, expert, an economist, Destiny Owobo, is joining us via Zoom this afternoon. Destiny Owobo, nice to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
Okay. All right. So we'll talk about the investment opportunities in Africa, the challenges, and of course, the prospects. Now, what exactly do we mean? And let's start from there. When we talk about investment opportunities in Africa, help us make sense of that in the first place.
Yeah, investment opportunities in Africa refers to the potential of African economies to generate wealth from within its shores and to generate employment, generate income, uh, and diversify this wealth in all its sectors. Africa is a major hub when it comes to investments because uh, it is a continent with multiple people. We have 1.4 billion people living in Africa. Uh, the planet itself has about 7.5 billion. So a continent that has 1.4 billion people is a big potential marketplace. Secondly, Africa happens to be the fastest growing in population in the world. The median age of Africans is young Africans is 19 years. That means Africa has the highest number of youth population of people in the world, and these people, which are 19 between 19 and 35, are the major workforce required to grow the potential income of the world. So we are saying that by 2030, Africa would have doubled to about 3 billion people, and 3 billion people with that potential of young people can translate to enormous wealth for Africa. Africa also happens to have abundance of natural resources. We're talking about tin, cobalt, agricultural products, mineral resources, crude oil. These things are domiciled in Africa in large commercial quantities, and the entire world depends on these mineral resources and agricultural resources to grow their industrial base. So Africa is a market superpower. Africa is a resource superpower. Africa is a population superpower. So when we talk about business in Africa, Africa is the place to be if you want to grow your business for the next 20 to 30 years. Japan, Europe, and North America, they are declining in population, and the number of people being born in such societies is reducing by the day. Uh, some countries are experiencing aging population, and so Africa is really the powerhouse of the future planet. of the future world. So that's what it means from a business perspective.
All right. Now, good to know that you also said that by 2030, which is about another 5 years from now, that the population of Africa would have doubled. Some say it would have tripled, if not quadrupled. I mean, now other continents of the world, their population seems to be decreasing, whereas Africa's own is increasing. Kudos to us as a continent, but this continent of the
I would like
world
to,
that their
I
population
would
is
like to make
decreasing.
a correction. The population of Africa is said to be doubling, said to be doubling, not immediately, but by 2050. Africa's population will double in 2050. But by 2030, Africa happens to be the fastest growing youth population in the world. By 2030, we expect that it will have the highest number of young people in the world.
Yeah,
That's it.
exactly. It's what I'm trying to explain right now. Now, by 2030, that's just another 5 years from now. Africa would have increased in terms of youth population and all that. Now, what I'm saying is that while other continents of the world may use this population index to their advantage in terms of improving their economy, in terms of taking advantage of business opportunities, what seems to be happening in Africa is that the economy seems to be going down, whereas the population is increasing. Other continents of the world, ordinarily, they will, possibly use that population to their advantage. So, what do you think is happening? We have an increasing population, but on the other way around, our economy is going down. So, what is happening?
Yeah, like I said earlier, population is a matter of potential. But potential use of population is not equivalent to use of population. For population to be an asset in Africa instead of a liability, it can also be a liability because that means we have more mouths to feed. It therefore means that we need more housing, we need more healthcare, we need more transportation facilities. So population can be a liability when you look at it from the perspective of consumption. But here, we are looking at the productive power of African population, not the consumptive power. So for African population to be an asset, the following needs to be in place: the infrastructure to support development. Now, the question is, does Africa have enough infrastructure to take advantage of its youth potential? I'll give you a practical example. The world is going towards artificial intelligence, AI, digital technology. But for that to happen, for a country to be able to maximize that technology, you need to have what we call data centers, okay? A data center, you need to have fiber optic cables laid around the country. You need to increase your bandwidth technology. You need to increase massive investments in technical know-how to be able to take advantage of that technology. I'll give you an example. The United States, for instance, has over 3,500 data centers, okay? The United States is just a country in North America, but the entire Africa does not have up to 300 data centers. So we are looking at two different spaces. We have a country that has over 3,000 data centers. Then we have a continent that does not even have up to 300 data centers. That's one example. For example, when we talk about power, for instance, the US, for instance, generates over 1,000,000 megawatts of power, whereas Nigeria, for instance, a very population-rich country in Africa, only generates between 4,000 to 5,000 megawatts. Egypt, 60,000 megawatts. South Africa, 50,000 megawatts. But the total generating capacity of Africa is not up to 100,000, 500,000 megawatts of power. For a continent that wants to take advantage of its potential, it should be investing in infrastructures in the area of production infrastructure, road, ports, data centers, fiber optic cables, infrastructures that support growth and development. Okay? Africa does not have enough of that. Secondly, Africa has no potential when it comes to financial institutions. If you wanted to do a business in some other parts of the country, we have what we call venture capitalists. We have a lot of companies that fund entrepreneurs that grow these businesses up to a certain point where you can sell them or where you can invite shareholders to come and buy shares in those companies. So you need a lot of investment banks, you need a lot of venture capitalist companies, you need a capitally a capital market well developed enough to attract funds and take advantage of the potential of that place. I'll give you a statistic to give you some idea. The New York Stock Exchange, for instance, the total amount of money that flies through all African exchanges is just what flies into the New York Stock Exchange every 1 month. The total volume of trade in all African exchanges is what flies through the United States New York Stock Exchange in just 1 month. It therefore means that our capital markets are underdeveloped. With that small size of capital market, we cannot grow the continent. So financial capital infrastructure is a critical element of growth, taking advantage of the population. Another limitation Africa is dealing with is when we talk about skills mismatch. Now, the world is growing towards technology. We are in the information age, the technology revolution. Here, we have a lot of people in Africa, over 600 million young people who do not have the technical skills required to function and take advantage of the opportunities in the world. By here, we are talking about digital skills, information technology, data science, data analytics, artificial intelligence. We're talking about factory systems, mechanization. We're talking about local engineering industry, fabrications. These kind of industries require heavy technical education. But the kind of education we do in Africa is philosophical education. We are producing more doctors, more lawyers. We are producing more historians. We are producing more professors. But we don't produce enough of technical experts. And these technical experts are well developed in vocational schools, technical colleges, and all others. So Africa's youth population do not have the mix of technical skills required to function in the 21st century. If you do an advertisement for software engineers, for instance, in Africa, for a position for software engineers, if Africa produces 13, China will produce 100,000 software engineers. If Africa produces 13 data scientists, China will produce 300,000 data scientists. So it's not about the population. It's about the potential, the capacity of the population to deliver creditably in the workplace, in the production workplace. So this involves massive investment in education, not just philosophical education, but technical, vocational, engineering education, okay, science and engineering education. Another major problem Africa is dealing with is policy mismatch, okay, from our democratic systems are not well developed such that these governments are able to produce politicians that are business-oriented, politicians that have the required skills.
All right, Destiny, let me pause you there. We'll be right back. We quickly need to take this break. Don't forget the program is still African Discourse. Please stay tuned. All right, thank you one more time. The program's still on your television, independent TV. We still have Destiny Owobu right there joining us virtually from Benin on the program this afternoon. Now, Destiny, you were trying to explain that one of the major reasons why Africa seems not to be developing is that we are not investing in information technology. May you continue with that point?
Yes, I was talking about information technology, the kind of education. We are going to calculate something. What's the return on agriculture that we are investing heavily in? Okay, agriculture returns a lot when you invest capital in it, not when you invest labor. For example, in the United States, only about 4% of the United Americans are farmers, but yet they feed the entire country and some parts of Canada, all right? But in Africa, over 70% of the population is engaged in agriculture, and yet Africa cannot feed itself. It therefore means that the missing link is technology. We are not using technology to augment labor in a way that will generate massive output. We are still investing huge amounts of our resources, human resources, in agriculture. But what is the return on agriculture compared to the return on technology, for instance? The returns are higher in technology. So why are we investing so much of our population in agriculture? So these are the issues. Another major problem in Africa is the problem of governance. Okay, for businesses to thrive in a continent, there needs to be property rights. A situation where somebody comes to buy a land in a place in Africa, and then you have people who community people who come to take advantage of this person, raises the price of this land, and then people find it difficult to sign contracts in Africa because they don't have contract rights that are enforceable in courts. You know, somebody buys a property. I can, from here, buy a property in the US, for instance, without having to pay anybody or any group of people to secure the land. But you cannot say that, for example, in a city like Benin, you buy properties here and then you have to pay money to some youths, parallel government structures for the land to be yours. So we don't have property rights here. We don't have a policy frameworks that support good business, for instance. Okay, if I start a business here and I wanted to get loan for my business, the government, the financial system is not yet developed enough for a person to just walk up to a bank and get loans to fund a business. In fact, the risk of doing business in Africa is higher because of the regulatory and policy framework.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Our market systems are not developed. Our policy frameworks are not well developed to support business. See, what about insecurity? These are governance variables. In a country where you hear of news of kidnapping and people being killed for no reason, investors will run away from such places. So these are the governance variables. So I believe that if we handle these 4 challenges, Africa is on the way to reap of its population potential. Okay. The first thing we need to handle is the question of infrastructure. The second thing is the question of technical vocational education. The third thing is to organize the politics in a way that it supports business. We cannot be doing traditional politics where people steal ballot boxes and people cannot have their votes turn into a real vote, and you expect the such continent to grow. You know. Right, so, Number 4, we cannot invest. Definitely. We must invest heavily in production infrastructure. If you get these 4 things right, then Africa already has the foundational basis for development. We have the natural resources, we have the human resources, then we also have the population growth to support those resources, but we don't have the systems that help to engineer such progress in our continent. Okay. That is where policymakers need to come in.
All right, let us look at other things that seems to be so related now, because we have so many economic blocks in Africa. You have the ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States. You have the Pan-Africanism, and you have so many other ones. Now, these blocks are supposed to, encourage member states to grow economically. In other words, to take advantage of investment opportunities in Africa. Now, how would you want to rate, the performance of these blocks over the years?
Yes, it's a good thing that Africa has been doing a lot of integration, investment integration through ECOWAS, through African Union, through the AICFTA, which the basis of that is to encourage economic integration of African countries such that they're able to trade with each other and take advantage of the trade opportunities that exist within the continent. But on paper, these organizations are well-formed, well-intentioned, but then the reality is this: Africa still trades outward. It will shock you to know that 90% of trade between Africa and Europe and North America. Only 10% of trade exists within African countries themselves. That is a huge gap. For a continent that wants to grow, it must be able to integrate within itself. The AICFTA is trying to bring the 54 countries of Africa together such that they can trade with each other. So I can produce a commodity here in Nigeria and sell it in South Africa. A South African can produce goods and sell it in Namibia.
All right, we seem to be having some internet.
We want a station where the highest volume, we want the high volume of trade to exist intra-Africa, not with Africa and the rest of the world. So these bodies, regional bodies, they should come together more and find a way to remove trade restrictions that makes Africa only trade 10%. Instead of, they can look at 30%, 40% in the next 30 years and see whether we can raise it to 70% by 2050, okay? And that is where we are going to take advantage of the resources of Africa. Currently, Africa is seen as a resource destination. 90% of what we export are primary products, and we export them to the rest of the world, to Europe and North America, okay? We should be exporting such products to fellow African countries where these products can be processed, added value on, because this is where the population is, so that we can create more value, create more employment, create more industries, create more income for ourselves, instead of just becoming a primary resource base. So that is where these regional bodies come in. Their mandate is to ensure that intra-African trade grows beyond the current 10 to 50% to something between 50 and 60% to be able to take advantage, unlock the potentials of the continent.
Okay. All right, Destiny. Now, I don't know whether we may have to, try to imbibe the Trump's model. I mean, Trump came into government in the U.S., and of course, we've seen the recent tariff increase here and there. Now, all is to boost the economy of the U.S. against other countries of the world. Now, so do you think that Africa as a continent, that we may have to employ the Trump's model? I mean, we're talking about how we can boost our economy through investment opportunities and all that.
Yes, I think currently in Africa, we do not yet have the regional power to determine the world trade. The U.S. is a major world power, and any time it moves, the world moves with it. China is another major bloc that is antithetical to the United States. Africa can become a third bloc on its own, but here we do not yet have the competency to compete with these superpowers. So what Africa can do in the moment is to try to see how they can profit from the business war between the United States and China and find themselves in the middle. Because
yeah, just go on.
That is, yes, like I said, these two countries, the United States and China, sees Africa as a resource source. So they depend on Africa and its natural resources for their industrial powers. So what Africa can do is to find a way to leverage on its position to take advantage of the current ongoing trade war between the United States and China, because these are the two superpowers, okay? And then find a way to locate themselves profitably in these fights. For example, if the United States begins to see Africa as supporting the Chinese move and decide to trade away from Africa, then Africa can divert their trade to China and take advantage of Asia, for instance. So Africa does not have any incentive being in the fight. We just have to find a way to take advantage of the fight that is going on and grow our continent. That is where we stand in the whole issue.
Okay. Now, just like what you said, that, Africa perhaps need to look away from the U.S. and take their trade to China. A lot of analysts have also supported that. But we are looking at the things that we stand to lose, not the things we stand to gain, because that seems to be a major talking point. That seems to be a major concern, that, look, this trade relationship, it doesn't come free. I mean, if U.S. does a trade with you, there's a certain amount of things that you need to lose. So if we begin to look inward now, take our trade to China, is it not the same thing? Are we not talking about, losing, trading at the expense of our continent?
Yes, looking at other countries as a source of trade is a short-term measure. The ultimate long-term measure is to grow your creative potential. And that's why I say we should invest in educating our youth population, which make up about 600 to 700 million of Africa. So imagine if you are able to train and educate about 700 million young people in Africa, such that they are able to develop their human capital. The greatest source of capital everywhere in the world is the human component. Infrastructure is only great when we have a human taking advantage of it. So Africa, have we invested heavily in our youth population? The greatest liberator of the African continent is not going to be investment in infrastructure. It's going to be investment in its people. And as I speak to you now, while the whole world is suffering from declining population, Africa is expanding in population. So we can take advantage of that, but not just giving birth to more children, and making sure that we educate them for the skills that are relevant for the 21st century. With these skills, Africa can export its population to the rest of the world, such that our wealth is not localized on land, it's localized in our...
All right, there's Wobble there, just talking about things. Yeah, you can continue. Yeah, there's Wobble, you may continue. All right. So the program is still this one it is still African Discourse on Independent Television, looking at opportunities, investment opportunities in Africa, the challenges, and of course some of the prospect that lies in this, investment opportunities. Now, we've been able to see some of the challenges as enumerated by Destiny Owobo, that one major issue that Africa needs to. All right, so Destiny, quickly, I'll just give you 1 minute to wrap it up because I'll quickly go for a short break. Destiny. Destiny.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, the greatest asset Africa has is its people. Contrary to public opinion that it is natural resources, the greatest asset Africa has, it is people. We have over 600 million young people in Africa, which is potential energy. All we need to do is to educate them to be technically relevant for the 21st century. If we're able to educate the youth force of Africa, they can become a resource, what we call human capital, which can be exported to the rest of the world, and they can generate billions of dollars to Africa in earnings because of their resource, their mental potential. It is not in land, it is not in trees, it is not in natural resources. The greatest wealth of a nation is in its people.
All right, so we'll just quickly take a short pause now, and when we return, we'll look at some other developments that some countries in Africa has gone through recently. I mean, for example, Nigeria being a partner of, partnering with the BRICS of nations. So let's see how that can also bring some form of boosts to, investments, economic investments in other continents. We'll be right back. Thank you one more time. The program's still on your television, African Discourse on ITV. And one more time, my name is Evan Sunokoge. Destiny Owobo is our guest, and he's joining us virtually this afternoon from Benin. Now, Destiny Owobo, recently we saw the move to boost, economy. Major nations in Africa joining the BRICS of nations. Nigeria is there. But, on the basis of partnership, a lot of persons are still not comfortable with that now. So the BRICS of nations, do we have anything to gain, as it were, as it relates to boosting our economy, taking advantage of, investment opportunities on the continent?
From where I stand, the BRICS, joining BRICS and others will lead to an economic war with the United States. The United States see BRICS and everything it stands for as anti the US. And anytime any country tries to form a bloc against the United States, there are going to be repercussions.
But a while ago, you said that Africa can begin to look elsewhere. So if the United States keeps on increasing that tariff, perhaps joining the BRICS is a good move.
Yes, I was saying something recently. It's like what happened during the Second World War when Nigeria took a non-aligned policy. There was also a Cold War between the East and the West. The East and the West refers to the Allies and the Axis powers. But Nigeria, as a matter of fact, took a non-aligned, such that we are not aligned to any of the powers. Like I told you, Africa has nothing to gain by aligning with the US or China in any way whatsoever. What we can do is to fight to get our resources on the market, to get our potential on the market. We cannot be joining associations that will make us seem as if we are taking sides in this war. We should be able to find a way to take advantage of both of them, okay, such that we are able to attract investments in Africa. I'll give you, for example, the total world investments in Africa is just 3%. You can imagine the trillions of dollars that are flying around the world. Only 3% of it end up in Africa. So our own major goal is not to be aligned with any of these, whether the BRICS or the United States. Our major goal should be to find a way to attract investment to Africa. And how do we do that? We don't need to join BRICS to achieve that. We need to, first of all, get the fundamentals right. What are the fundamentals? One, invest heavily in infrastructure. Two, invest in good governance variables. Three, invest in technical education for the youth population of Africa. This is how the Europeans are seeing Africa. They are seeing it as a resource potential. But currently, it is only in mineral resources. We need to move it to human resources. When they begin to see Africa as a major source of human resources, then such investments will flow into Africa. We need to find a way to attract either from the United States, from Europe, or from China. forming blocks that will make us look as if we are taking sides will be counterproductive. Because this is the reason why they increased the tariffs against Africa. If the United States perceive that most of Africa is trying to edge with the BRICS, they will increase their tariff against Africa. It is a matter of survival. They are trying to hedge against the risk of losing business with Africa. So we cannot, I don't personally think Nigeria should have anything to do with BRICS. We are creating lean dependency on China when we do that. What we should be doing is investing in African infrastructure, investing in African governance, investing in African human resource potential, such that we'll be able to attract investment organically from the US or from China or from Europe.
All right, so we have also seen that there seems to have been a kind of an increase in the surge of investments from this big world. Talking about China, for example, into the continent Africa. We've seen some Chinese companies, in Nigeria. That's some sort of investments in Africa. But what experts are concerned about is that this investment initiatives seems to be to the advantage of the Chinese nation, not to the advantage of the countries where they are domiciled. Take, for example, we have, I don't want to mention names, we have some few Chinese companies in Benin here, Benin. People are saying that these companies they are still to the advantage of the Chinese people, not to the advantage of Nigeria. I mean, so how do we begin to redirect this narrative?
Yes, it is in international relations. It is in the interest of Chinese people to benefit themselves when they do business with any part of the world. It should also be the interest of Africa to protect itself from such manipulations. For example, nobody gives you free money anywhere in the world. If China is making investments in your continent, it is because they want to get something in return. It is your responsibility to ensure that whatever they want to get does not become inimical to your own growth or to your own national interest. It is in African interest to ensure that there are conditionalities and there are rules of engagement by which investment flow in Africa is used and domesticated and repatriated to China. It is not China that will protect our interests. It is Africa that should protect its interests. That's why we need to invest heavily in foreign relations so that we'll be able to understand the issues at stake, understand China's interest, understand our interest, and negotiate our interest to the best of our abilities such that we are not taken advantage of. Because China is doing a lot with its own foreign policy. They are going to protect their interests. You can't do anything about that. Every country, including the United States, China, Europe, is selfish. It is quite natural in international relations. What you should do as a country or as a continent is to be selfish enough to be able to add other people's selfishness in your own selfishness. Okay? That's what diplomacy is all about. When you attract such investment, you must put conditionalities in a way that it favors your people more than it favors the person who is coming to take advantage of your economy. When you are not doing that, your continent becomes a free-for-all for people, for scavengers who want to divide and share the continent. We don't want that. So that is why African governments need to be aware of these issues and be able to negotiate their position with these superpowers.
Okay. All right. So in all of all this now, one major, issue that has wrestled the progress of investment opportunities in Africa is the issue of insecurity. I mean, it's been a big problem for more than 2-3 decades now. The continent has been fighting insecurity to the extent that a lot of good brains have left the continent, going elsewhere to invest. Now, little wonder how these bigger nations, how they come here, they still bet their investment opportunities, on the continent of Africa. But help us to give us an insight. Now, what do you think has not been done on this continent to actually wrestle insecurity issues in Africa? What do you think has not been done?
Yes, poverty and insecurity are Siamese twins. Okay, anywhere there's poverty, there's bound to be insecurity. So I'll give you some figures to illustrate it. The total GDP of the entire Africa is just 3 trillion US dollars. The GDP of China is about 20 trillion. That of the United States is about 30 trillion as I speak. It therefore means that the US, for instance, is 10 times richer than Africa. With that amount of money, the US can spend close to 2 trillion on its security. Okay? And when you don't generate enough income, you cannot guarantee security. Poverty and insecurity are related. Why is there insecurity? It's because people are poor. People are looking for opportunities. People are trying to take advantage of each other in a way to increase their income. That is the basic foundation of insecurity. Insecurity is closely related to poverty and lack of opportunities. And so that is why we are talking about attracting investment into Africa such that Africa will be able to grow its income. I'll give you an example. Nigeria has a population of about 220 million people, and we only have about 250,000 policemen. For a country the size of Nigeria, we need at least 1.5 million policemen to be able to police this country. But we only have 250,000, and these 250,000 are not even well paid. They are paid meager incomes. How do you guarantee security when you have shortage of staff, and these staff, they are not even well motivated in terms of finances and insurance? So that is why income is related to insecurity. We must grow our economy. We must grow our industrial base, generate income for our continent. We should get away from what has 54 countries got to do with $3 trillion? United Kingdom, just a country in Europe, is about $7 trillion. The United Kingdom is richer than Africa twice, 54 countries put together. So Africa's problem is poverty. If we don't tackle the poverty in Africa, insecurity is a natural consequence of poverty. So that is why we need to grow the income. We need to take our industrialization efforts seriously, diversify the economy, grow our income such that we're able to employ a lot of security agencies, invest in technology, fight cyber methods of dealing with crime, and then we can increasingly secure our borders, secure our country from criminals. Poverty is the major cause.
Okay, quickly as we wrap up now, let's talk about the space of borrowings. Africa as a continent, is known for, although it's going cap in hand, going to the supernations, borrowing and all that. Now, our leaders tell us most times that these monies that they borrow is to expand on investments and develop infrastructure and all that. But even we don't see this investment, we don't see this infrastructure. So for a continent that really wants to boost its investment opportunities and perhaps also boost its economy, should we continue to go cap in hand? Should we continue to borrow?
Yes, technically borrowing is not a bad thing. It is what you borrow the money to do. That is what is important. When you borrow, you are supposed to use such funds for income-generating assets or income-generating investments. African politicians are one of the highest paid people in the world. And yet, Africa goes to Europe to go and borrow money every time. How do you match those two things? You borrow billions of dollars from these countries, and yet your politicians live heavy and fat. In a country where we have politicians richer than businessmen, such a country is badly constructed. Politicians everywhere in the world answer to the business environment. But here in Africa, people can kill their business just to join politics because there's a largesse to loot. So you borrow from the rest of the world, and then you come to Africa, you steal it, and use meager parts of it to do palliatives for people, and then only a fraction of it goes into critical infrastructure. So it's not about borrowing. What are we borrowing the money to do? Are we building more power plants? Are we building more factories? Are we building more seaports, airports? Are we building more fiber optic investments? Are we building more data centers? No. What we are doing, we are borrowing to finance ostentatious lives of our politicians and their cronies. And such borrowing is a wasted borrowing because we are simply postponing the evil day. We are borrowing and pushing the debt to our children to pay. So we need a lot of funds. I get that. I see why we borrow. But what do we use such borrowing to do? That's the question. That big question is the elephant in the room. It's not about borrowing. What are we borrowing to finance? Are we financing consumption or financing investments? Those are the questions you should be asking.
All right. A while ago, you also talked about the need to improve on our information technology and also invest in our youths that are willing so that we can increase the economy. Now, in a situation whereby the youths, they don't want to stay, you give them the opportunity, they leave the continent, and of course, they just leave, and most of them, they don't want to come back. So how would you do that?
Yeah, I think when we say the youths that they don't want to stay, you are assuming that how many youths can afford to leave this country? That's the question. If you want to leave Nigeria now to Europe or America, you need to have at least 30 to 40 million in your bank account.
Yeah,
It's
but
even
you give them the
expensive trying to
opportunity, they
travel out.
leave.
They leave. Yes,
Yeah.
no. What that means that there are no opportunities here. So what do? You are supposed to, the purpose of government is to create opportunities for people to earn a living in their country. Nobody loves to leave their country when they have the opportunities there. Because when you go abroad, you're going to face issues of racism, issues of profiling, issues of xenophobia, people trying to treat you anyhow. Nobody wants to go to another man's country and be treated like trash. But when you see people, despite all these challenges, still running away from the country, it's a sign that the country is becoming a very difficult place to live in. And how do we reverse the trend? We need to take education seriously, healthcare seriously, insurance seriously. We need to take business investment seriously, industrialization seriously. Because if the government is investing in those areas, it will not happen immediately. We can reverse this trend if we focus on solving African problems. Okay, the more we try to solve these problems, the more people begin to feel settled, and the more most people from abroad will return home. Currently, Nigeria already generates over $30 billion in remittances alone. These are Nigerians who traveled abroad and are returning money to their families in Nigeria. It therefore means that they love their place. They have families here, brothers and sisters in this place. If the continent was great enough, most of them will return. I personally have friends who were educated in the US and United Kingdom who returned to Nigeria to come and set up businesses.
All right,
Okay?
so
But
yes.
some of them are thinking about going back now
Yeah.
because their investment was run aground, and they believe it's not a safe place to invest.
Okay. All right. So what we're saying ultimately is that rather than Africa invest on
So that's the
agriculture.
challenge. What is the government doing to keep this brain drain?
Yeah, please go on. Go on. You said what is government doing to keep? Yeah, to keep the
To
brain
keep
drain.
the brain drain. Yeah, for instance, what is the government doing? Why do you think people will leave this country and go to another country? Because they want a better life. Now, if you get such better life in your country, I was reading a statistic yesterday that if you earn 4 million naira a month, you are among the top 10% richest Nigerians. If you earn more than 6 million naira a month, you are among the top 1% richest Nigerians. 6 million naira is just $2,000. That is what some cleaners earn in Europe.
Yeah, but
and in North America.
environment differs now. Environment differs. I mean,
But
2000.
quality of life can be seen through the internet. People here use Facebook and TikTok, and they see what their mates everywhere in the world can afford and live the quality of life that they live. Wealth is not just about income; it's about quality of life. What about healthcare? What about security? What about good governance? What about other variables that are intangible that improve the quality of life? What about justice? If I go to court, what is the belief that I'm going to get justice? What is the probability that if a poor man is arrested, he's able to get justice without being mishandled? What is the probability that if a rich man slaps a poor man in Nigeria, the both of them will go to court and justice will be gotten? These issues are intangibles, but they're important in quality of life assessments.
Okay. All right. So, Destiny, what we are saying, or what you are saying ultimately, is that for Africa to increase or Africa to develop, in terms of opportunity, investment opportunities, the continent needs to look more in information technology rather than agriculture, investing in agriculture. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
We must look inwards, locate our problems, and solve them. And then these people in other parts of the world will return home to come and solve the problem with us.
All right, so I want to say a very big thank you, Destiny Owobo, for joining us today on the program African Discourse. And some of the big points that we are taking away today is that the continent really needs to look inward. And in doing that, we should invest more in information technology rather than agriculture, because you look at the continent for some time, investing in agriculture has really not done the continent so well. And as far as modern time is even concerned, other bigger nations of the world, they are taking their pride of place in information technology. So Africa as a continent cannot afford to be a bench sitter. So I want to say thank you so much, Destiny Owobo, for joining us on the program today.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Okay. All right. So until same time next week on this same program, African Discourse. My name is Evan Sunokogie. Goodbye and God bless you.